Howdy y'all. So we are team number 2, in other words, make Rita great again. So we're going to be going over the quadruple net value of the Madeline Park based out of Houston, Texas. So this is our team. So we've got Julio, we've got Joel, James, Chase, and then myself, Lauren. So moving on, I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys a little bit of what we're going to go over. So like I said, Madeline Park, it is based out of Houston, Texas, off of Interstate 249. The park has done a great job at increasing not only the physical health but also the mental health of the residents around it, providing an area for them to relax, and also increasing the physical health of their animals. What we're going to be going over is the 4 parts of our quadruple net value, which is culture, environment, economics, and sensory. So we'll go ahead and move on to our video here that we have for you guys.
out the social and cultural. Alright, so park security relies on the neighborhood watch and the local law enforcement. And see, as you can see here, there's 4 substations. So every shift starts and ends in these 4 substations. And it'd be about probably a 7-minute or less drive to Madeline Park. So, that being said, so there's a cooperation between the neighborhood watch and local law enforcement. As you can see here, that there is a cooperation because there are crimes committed and there has been a response to these crimes. So they are detected and they are responded to. Madeline Park has direct access to the streets, to the public sidewalks. You can use any mode of transportation. You can walk there, you can drive a vehicle there, even though parking is limited. The sidewalks and the park itself is ADA compliant. So there's 2 different types of benefits from the park. You have health benefits and social benefits. There's 2 miles of paved pathway for exercises, so you can jog, you can run, you can do sprints. They also have a a pond for catch and release. It's a great place to take your pets. They have picnic areas. They have trees and green space used for all type of activities like flag football, and trees that you can take a nap under if you wanted to. So they also have educational programs, like the most recent one's the National Night Out, which is a law enforcement initiative program. It brings the community together, tries to build trust with the community, and law enforcement, it engages issues, like it's, the general topic would be response times to priority calls there. And then you also have casual encounters, like connectivity, like Dr. Brewster, friend he met there. We talked about why he came there, where he came from, his insurance problems from his last flood disaster. And there's a couple of unique characteristics of the park. They have 18 different quotes, which, as you see, don't think you are, know who you are. And they also have a metal reflective ball that people use.
All right, guys. Howdy, my name is Joel. I'm going to go over the economic side of Madeline Gardens Park. One of the things that might have stuck out to you if you did do the economic side for your group, we have $4 million as a cost, and some of you guys had $3 million. I based it off of what I heard in the field study, so that explains that discrepancy there. $200,000 in annual costs for the park. And as far as funding was concerned, they did long-term debt with a $3 million bond, basically a partnership between the county and the residents. Okay, so incentives for building the park. So there's probably several economic incentives that we can mention. The one that we want to focus on is to increase the values of the homes, which for the county, subsequently that would increase the tax revenue. Not increase the rates of the taxes, but increase the revenues by simply the values of the homes going up. Okay, so we did something a little different. We did a case study, and what we did is we took 4 sets of homes. Set 1 was 10 houses adjacent to the park. Set 2 was 10 houses in the neighborhood, roughly a 5-minute walk, still within the neighborhood. Set 3 was 10 houses in a different neighborhood to the west of the park, about a 5-minute drive. And then set 4 was 10 houses, different neighborhood to the east, about a 5-minute drive to them. I had this backwards, I'm sorry. Set 3 was to the west, set 4 was to the east. That's backwards, my apologies. Additional details. Set 1 through 3, those were all within about the same year of when they were built. Set 4 was kind of the outlier. It was built within the 70s. Square feet, there was a variety of range. These are the average of the 10 houses. And then home values, that was quite a bit of a range there as well. As far as location of the data sets, you can see set 1 is the blue right here. This is set 2. Of course, the park is right there. Set 3 is over to the west, and set 4 is over to the east. Okay, so what we wanted to know was how did the homes that were close to Madeline Park, how did those increase in value? And then the second thing we wanted to know is by what percentage have the homes risen in value? Okay, to measure the value, we looked at dollar per square foot, and what we saw was that Set 1 and Set 2 had a higher dollar per square foot than Sets 3 and 4. This was right at about $93 per square foot. This was $98. This was $84, and this was $77. To give you guys an idea of how much more the houses closer to Madeline Gardens Park were worth. As far as increases in home value, that's a lot of numbers to throw at you, but that just shows you that we did an average from 2010 every other year until 2018. Increase in home values. Okay, this is more digestible information. What we have right here is, as some of you guys have pointed out, there was a decrease in home values right around 2012. Definitely so in Set 4. And then as it went to 2018, the values increased. One of the things I do want to point out here, as you saw in the video, there is a 28% increase in value in Sets 1 and 2 near the park. In our data, there's a higher increase in values of houses away from the park. We'll get to that here in a second. So this is Sets 1 and 2. You notice a dip and then an increase in value up to 2018. And what we got from these results is that the houses closer to the park, there's a higher per square foot value. Houses closer to the park did increase in value. Now what I wanted to get to is, yes, houses further away from the park, according to our data, did increase in value slightly more. But our explanation for that is these were houses that were already lower in square foot, and as the housing market, as there began to be a greater demand for houses, those prices kind of leveled out, and the houses that were more cheap went up higher in value simply because of that demand. The way we look at this, and the positive aspect of this to Madeline Gardens Park, is that if housing values go down or if there is a decrease in demand, we believe that the houses closer to Madeline Square Park will maintain their value more. So they're more stable in their values. And so what that means for the county is that they will have stable revenues with these houses closer to Madeline Gardens Park.
Cool. Well, howdy y'all. I'll be doing the environmental analysis of our quadruple net value. So to start it off, give y'all some context of the water treatment of the park. So the board actually put down $500,000 for a fix to the treatment plant that was already installed. So it takes normal and acceptable effluent water and it brings it to the treatment plant, treats it to a public quadrant standard that is safe enough to be around. And it actually is not clean drinking water, but however, it is safe enough to be around. So just some water characteristics of the treated water that comes into the park. So it's bottled water right out of the city system. It's effluent, so it's falsely colored, and meaning that it's not something you would find in the wild, but it does resemble like the brown, like healthy water with the silt and nutrients for the surrounding vegetation and animals in the area. And yeah, Miss Callie actually talked about a story about her friend coming upon some water that was actually clear, and she thought that was just very pure, and there was no wildlife around it. So that kind of gave you the idea that maybe something was wrong, and there were actually chemicals that were hazardous and could harm the environment. So there are some boulders found within the water settings, and this actually encourages people to explore their options and find a different sense of perception. So they're encouraged to walk on these boulders and have a different kind of experience. And there's actually a sidewalk that bridges over this water and kind of installs like the same sense of place, but it's not exactly the same. But it allows people to access that who may be in a wheelchair or they don't have the ability to walk on these boulders. So the detention basin is actually dug deeper to allow for a more efficient stormwater management system, and it's just to allow the houses to have like a better protection from flooding. So that's why they were dug deeper. In the past, it wasn't deep enough for the water, and so they just do that to protect them. And they contain wildlife habitats. And from this picture, it was 2013 to 2017. You can see the amount of growth and vegetation that is provided on these islands. And there's actually critters and other birds that use these, but dragonfly communities are actually installed in these environments, and they keep down the mosquito community so that walkers can enjoy their environment without getting bitten. And So a little bit about the soil and greenery. Ms. Talley actually experimented with this on her farm, and she inserted these organic or chemical-free hay into these rills, and rills are made, they form from water runoff and actually cut into the earth, force of erosion. And this organic or chemical-free hay actually had microbes and other bacterial fungi in the hay, and it actually produced a system to where growth was formed. And so that's kind of how she used it. And so it's just like installed this growth that can be seen in the soil and other plant life. So just more about the trees and vegetation. So the Texas Forest Service came out and did surveys around the trees, and they achieved 14 years of growth in just that 7-year time span from the park starting to now. And also that is also seen in the palmettos. There are bushes next to the water settings, next to the bridges that I was talking about. And they actually grew so much that you could hardly see through them, and it kind of gives the constable a hard time trying to look and see where walkers are, but you can still see them. And yeah, it just aids in the growth of the trees and plantation. And it's chemical-free, no NPK use, no Roundup because that kills the microbes, but it's a very safe park that installs a sense of growth and environmental habitat.
Alright, so to top off quadruple net value, I'll be covering the sensory. So first off, we have sight. So whenever you first walk into the park, you're going to notice the diversity in vegetation and the water features. And eventually, you're going to notice all the messages scattered throughout the park. Now, the positioning of this text is very important because when a person is feeling sad or they're feeling down, their heads are going to be looking down. And they're eventually going to stumble upon these messages. And these messages are meant to cheer a person up. They're pretty uplifting. So the positioning of this text was very effective. And my personal favorite feature of this park is going to be the crosswalk, which is very reminiscent of tactical urbanism because the change in color is going to call attention toward the pedestrians that are crossing. This in conjunction with the parallel parking on both sides will narrow the lane even further, which creates a psychological trigger for drivers to slow down, thus making it safer for pedestrians to cross. Next, we have sound. So the most powerful sound on site is going to be the water fountain. It's pretty loud and it's a passive sound. So it's loud enough that you can hear it from a distance, but it's not overwhelming. And it is a passive sound, so it creates a sense of relief. Now, Madeline Park also has a negative sound aspect to it, and that comes in the form of cars. So whenever you're approaching the southern hemisphere of the park on Grant Road, you won't come face to face with the cars, but you'll still be exposed to their sound. But this isn't a high-speed, high-traffic count road, so you're not going to get that intense of a noise that you would get on a highway. In addition to that, you have a sound barrier in the form of vegetation cover, so that blocks off some of the sound as well. Moving on to touch, the most noticeable tangible object is probably going to be the sculptured ball in one of the islands. But another feature of touch are rails. So rails are most effective in the balcony because in the balcony, people are going to be leaning over, and when they do lean over, they're eventually going to make contact with rails, and these rails are present to enhance one's experience of the park. And finally, we have seating areas which are provided as resting nodes, typically in the northern hemisphere of the park. And for smell, Madeline Gardens Park does its job of controlling odor. So it uses organic pesticides, which use natural ingredients that will blend in with the ongoing natural smell of the park, in contrast to standard pesticides, which will create more aggressive aromas. And then trash facilities are a less appealing aspect of smell, but their positioning was done correctly because it doesn't overwhelm, it doesn't interfere with the natural smell of the park. Finally, we have taste. So this photo is obviously from National Night Out. Madeline Gardens Park doesn't have food vendors or food trucks on a regular basis, and this is an opportunity to experiment. So what they can do is install something like this on a monthly, perhaps maybe a weekly basis if it's popular enough, to create more community engagement. And with that being said, I'll transition back to Lauren, who's going to wrap it up.
So some conclusions that we had is this park did add home value. It did add the flood protection, especially during Hurricane Harvey. This was one of the only neighborhoods in Houston that did not flood. We did have some improvements that we saw, one of which was more seating. There are certain picnic areas, but it would be nice for around the park. There may be some more water setting seating. This would just allow people to kind of get away from the crowds a little bit more and go have their own little sense of space. Another one that we had was more trees around the trails. This would provide added protection from weather, so when it's a little bit rainy or cloudy, people could go out and not necessarily get as wet if there was foliage protecting them from the weather that was currently going on. Another one that we saw as important was added light. That would be cut off more so around 8 o'clock, but especially now that it's getting dark at 5 o'clock. Most people have dinner and might want to go outside and go for a walk around 6 or 7, and having that additional light would allow a security aspect. It would also allow the patrols to see further into the park at later times at night. So these were just some of the aspects that we saw. If you guys have questions or anything, I'll leave you with the cute pictures of the pups. Other than that, thanks and give 'em.